Guys, gals and non-binary pals, welcome back to Rhyme Signatures. Now, I've decided I've been far too nice lately. I'm living in constant fear that I'm being considered a soft touch by some, and in order to address these concerns and to appease the almighty YouTube algorithm by being all clickbaity and negative, I want to take a quick breather from my regular content schedule to talk about the most egregious songs I've encountered in my 38 years on this earth. What I'm discussing here today is 5 songs that I hate. I loathe these songs. I would use my magic lamp to have them purged from the world so that I never had to risk hearing them again, but in spite of my venom and vitriol for these tunes, I know for a fact that a lot of people like and even love some of these song choices. But my displeasure is not without merit, I assure you. In some cases, I just don't gel with these songs. There is no true justifiable reason beyond my sneering. But for some, we're going to be getting into anecdote territory, where I will lift the curtain for a while and let you peek into the past and reveal a little bit about where I'm coming from. Anyway, enough with my waffling, let's get on with it. At number 5 with Love Shack by the B-52s. If ever there was an anthem for the drunken hen party or stag do, from my experience it's been this god-awful, loathsome bucket of pig swill. I have lost count of the number of times I've been on a pleasant night out in the big city only for a pack of gaggling hyenas to emerge from behind the nearest kebab shop, chanting this song at an irritating volume with full intent to convince everyone within the immediate square mile that they are extraordinary singers and they're super fun and you should be in awe of how cool they are. Even if you were to disconnect my association of this song with the harridans of the night, this song really is just irritating to me. The male vocals especially are discordant, infuriating nonsense that sounds like it's being sung by a chicken with a tracheotomy. The hook is awful, the overall sound is like every worst part of the 1980s distilled into one frustration-provoking package. For me, this feels like a song written by people who don't understand or even like music. It feels like something written by design to be as irritatingly catchy without heeding any form of aural dissonance at all. It's like someone came up with a drunken chant, sent it to a recording studio, and somehow felt it was good enough to inflict upon an unknowing world, and I feel my toes curl up from the opening seconds of this track, and I will take great efforts to remove myself from its sound as quickly as I possibly can. Right, at number 4, it's Lazy by Express 2 featuring David Byrne. Right, it's story time, kiddos. Let's travel back in time to the halcyon days of 2002, where your boy here was doing his very first summer job at the now ill-fated Virgin Megastores. Now, I'm certain other retail stores function in a similar fashion, but back in the day, there used to be the Song of the Week that would get played multiple times an hour, and during my initial 2-week run of working there, I distinctly remember 2 particular songs. One of which was Crawling in the Dark by Hoobastank, which at the age of 16 I was totally fine with. But the other was Lazy by Express 2 featuring David Byrne, a song that to this day I find myself having a shocked anime protagonist reaction to during its opening bars if I ever hear it in the wild. There is a certain circle of hell reserved especially for the people responsible for this heinous example of musically constructed torture. I've put myself through the ringer for this video by revisiting every single one of these piss-wash excuses for music, but more so than any of the other examples here, this is the one I struggled to get past even the first chorus on. It's frustrating because I know it's not technically an awful song. I get it, you know? I just have such negative associations with it because I associate it with being a teenager, thrust into the world of labouring under capitalism, having customers yelling at me while hearing this one guy moaning about being lazy for the 15th time that shift. And all I wanted to do was get off the floor into the stockroom to escape the auditory hellscape that kept chasing me up and down the store. I think when I look back at this song 22 years after I first heard it, even if I disassociate my personal vendetta against it, I just really hate the vocals. I can't stand talking heads, sue me. The beat is boring and repetitive, and it just represents the worst of the old-school early 2000s dance era to me. A sadly unforgettable slice of musical mediocrity that continues to haunt my nightmares today. At number 3, it's Jump Around by House of Pain. Yeah, I know, a lot of people really love this song. You know, that's fine. But for me, it earns its place on the dumpster fire of fury and rage, mostly due to my association with it once again. Back in my carefree days of being a broke-ass student with little to no disposable income at my beck and call, but also with a desperate desire to keep my friend groups content, I used to go out to nightclubs 2 or 3 times a week. And while I always wanted to go to the alternative, the goth or metal venues, I would get dragged around to the preppy, poppier ones, you know, where the musical focus was firmly cemented on the current and the new. Now, of course, this was the current and the new from like 20 years ago, so there's no Dua Lipa or Charlie XCX or anything like that going on here. So there was little old, awkward, nerdy me bopping along to the inevitability of Usher's Yeah, Black Eyed Peas' My Humps, or Pussycat Dolls' Don't Ya, all of which honestly are as equally loathsome to me as this entry, but I had to pick one of them. And being in a situation where Blue WKD or Bacardi Breezes were the beverage of choice for most, I wasn't yet out of the closet and felt the social pressures to feign interest in members of the opposite sex for fear of a scandal breaking out and having to put up with the hateful 3.5 minutes of haha, we're all so drunk, wouldn't it be really fun to encourage everyone to jump up and down and inevitably spill their disgusting alcopop all over me. The number of times I would end up with some massive sloshed up valley boy practically stamping on me to this anthem for the damned is more times than I can possibly count. This song is an immediate association of getting drenched in cheap domestic lager by a gaggle of complete pissheads, and its only saving grace was that it usually signalled itself as the last song of the night, after which I could finally escape the sweat-laden hellhole that social conformity had trapped me in for the preceding 5 hours. At number 2, it's Star Trekkin' by The Firm. Oh my god, an actually awful song by design. Yeah, I was kind of tempted to leave this one off the list, as it's clearly meant to be bloody awful, and if you've never had the questionable delights of this horrific slice of British pop culture, then I'm not responsible for the loss of brain cells that will come from your search engine curiosity in the wake of this video. Now, the reason why I've included this song on the list, and as the penultimate entry, is because I had a somewhat traumatic experience, shall we say, with this song that I would love to share with you all, so you too can experience the true cringe and agony that I was once forced through. So, as I'm sure you're aware, in many office jobs it is common practice to have a company-wide conference, you know, an opportunity for the internal staff to get to know all the other departments, see what kind of work is done on a daily basis, and witness just what it is that keeps everything ticking over just like that. Now, many moons ago, I worked for a company that tragically no longer exists, and during one particular annual conference, the HR department, alongside many others, had a themed booth. Not an unusual thing, of course. Some of the departments had a medieval theme, you know, where they've got like their processes inscribed on these cheap cardboard shields or whatever. Or maybe they were, I don't know, movie theme, let's say, where they had a fake film reel to show off their internal methods, you know. It was all very quaint and harmless. Well, that is, of course, until we got to the HR department, who had an enclosed booth with doors that shut. Our group of around 12 or so people entered this Gom Jabbar test of humanity with no knowledge of the nightmare we were about to endure. Before us were about 8 middle management types, all dressed up in extraordinarily crude Star Trek uniforms, all smiling awkwardly at us. The doors closed, the music started, and we had to stand there in stunned, terrified silence as we witnessed the clunkiest, most poorly choreographed dance routine to this heinous example of music with nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. And the damn thing lasted the entire length of the song. 30 seconds in, I had contemplated throwing myself through the cheap plywood of the walls in an effort to escape and save my sanity from the third-degree cringe burns that my brain had just experienced. The song by itself alone is bad enough, but now every time I hear it, I can only picture Dave and Sharon from Recruitment smiling like the goddamn Joker whilst expecting some kind of applause once they'd finished. And at number 1, my most hated song of all time is Oxygen Part 4 by Jean-Michel Jarre. Yeah, I know, this one's controversial as my most hated song of all time. Now, I get that this is basically the dark side of the moon for electronica or whatever, and I've literally put this higher on the list than a piss-take song about Star Trek from a crappy novelty band. But I'm not trying to ruffle anyone's feathers here. I do have a legitimate reason for this being my most hated song of all time. But to clear the air, though, I hold no ill will towards Jean-Michel Jarre, nor do I begrudge anyone in the comments who didn't wait to listen to my little story about this song before they told me how awful I am, how I'm a damn fool for placing this song at the top of the list, etc, blah blah blah. No, my vitriol goes towards Bristol Airport. Take a seat, everybody, and I'll explain. It was the Christmas of 2004. I was finishing up my first semester at university, and I was due to be flying home for the holidays. Home at the time was just outside of Dublin, so the journey of Wales to Ireland was on the cards. I'd never flown solo before, but whatever, it's no big deal, right? What do? You get to the airport, you get on the plane, you're home in time for mulled wine and gingerbread men. Oh, but did Mother Nature have plans for little old me? Now, the night that I was due to fly, Cardiff Airport, which is a very small airport, I must point out, was enveloped by a fog so thick you'd think you were playing Dynasty Warriors 3 on the PlayStation 2. And surprise, surprise, every single flight was grounded. In a flash, I saw the departures board light up with Go to Flight Desk for my own flight out of Cardiff, and given that I had chosen the cheapo option and gone with Ryanair, let's just say that there wasn't much assistance being given out. I was politely informed that the next available flight to Dublin from Cardiff was in approximately 3 days. Like I told you, it's a small airport. Or I could get to Bristol Airport and get the flight from there the next morning. Now, you need to bear in mind at this point it's nearly midnight, I'm tired, I'm frustrated, I have no car, I'm young and panicking, and before I know what's happening, I'm in a taxi travelling the 60-mile distance to get to the next best airport. Now, after shelling out pretty much the only money I had left in my bank account, which incidentally I could not claim back from the airline, thanks Ryanair, I arrived at Bristol Airport and my night of hell was soon to begin. I had a flight in approximately 8 hours' time, I had no money, I had nowhere to sleep, nowhere to stay, other than the departure lounge itself, which was quite petite. But hooray, hooray, there were some benches, and they were long enough to lie down on. I was young and healthy, I figured, whatever, I can manage 8 hours on some benches, no big deal, easy mode. Now, bearing in mind, this is 2004. Ain't got no 3G, ain't got no smartphones, not for a poor student at least, and there ain't much in the way of any kind of entertainment going on at all. So, at around 10 minutes into getting comfortable into my attempt at dozing until the flight, I start to notice I've been hearing something. Dun, 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 dun. There was a small arcade about 10 metres from the benches with the shutters pulled down, preventing access to it, and there was a machine in there that was playing a 20-second loop of Oxygen Part 4 over and over and over and over for 8 hours. I could not reach the plug to disable my enemy. There were no staff to be seen. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. There was nowhere in this godforsaken airport that I could go to get away from the noise. I had no headphones. I had no iPod. I had nothing that could release me from this one repetitive sound. For 8 hours, I endured that loop. For 8 hours, all I could think about was that riff. And for 8 hours, I descended into the very pits of madness and insanity. And then finally, after having been awake for approximately 25 hours, my check-in desk opened. Hooray, freedom! Oh wait, no, the flight was delayed for another 3 hours. I mean, everything after that was a bit of a blur, but I did finally end up in Dublin. But the mental scars left on me by Oxygen Part 4 have never fully healed, and I will never be able to listen to Jean-Michel Jarre's magnum opus without getting severe flashbacks to one of the most stressful times of my young adult life. So, there you have it, my most hated song of all time, and I hope you can forgive me for my choice. I like to think it's not without a justifiable reason. So, what really gets on your wick? What songs drive you utterly balmy? Do you have any interesting stories about why you hate them so much? Please do tell me. Let's share our grief and anger together in the comments down there. As always, guys, if you have watched this far, thank you so very much indeed for watching. You are, after all, the reason I love doing this, and the reason I love sharing stories like this. But until next time, everybody, as always, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.